The figure appears in the hotel in the mines, has 4 to 5 encounters, its damage is insta-kill, and you first encounter it on door 50. The figure is the main antagonist of the hotel, first being found in the library on door 50 and again in the electrical room on door 100. It appears in the mines 2 to 3 times, first as a visual teaser in which the figure cannot harm the player, and then 2 more encounters in which you have to progress to the next room to escape him, with the second of these encounters not being guaranteed, but likely. The figure is blind but uses sound and vibration to track players to kill them instantly, like stated before. First, I'll cover the figure's version history and what changes have been made over time. The figure was introduced with the release of the game on August 10th, 2022, but his mechanics had changed drastically over time, primarily with the release of the Mines update. He was given a completely new animation set as well as new mechanics. In his old state, he reacted to your movement speed, and crouching naturally made you slower, which is why using modifiers like faster, 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 and maximum overdrive would still trigger the figure to react to you even if you were crouching. The second major mechanical change came in the form of noise tracking. He used to track the player when a noise was made, meaning that if he heard you, he would run towards the player rather than the location that the noise was made. The red arrow is where I made the noise, but the figure still comes towards me, the player. The reason I mention this is because we now have 2 separate game modes where the figure uses the previous version, Hotel Minus and Super Hard mode in the form of modifiers. Now, I'll talk about the figure's more basic and niche mechanics that you'll need to know going forward. This section will be brief, but contains a lot of important information to understanding his AI. Firstly, I'll go over a brief list of noises the figure can hear. He can hear you when you move if you're standing up, opening and closing lockers and drawers, entering a closet or locker, when using certain items, audio from other entities, and probably least significantly, powered up generators in the mines. The figure will instantly kill you if you make any physical contact with him unless you are holding a crucifix out, and if you are, it will be used and start a 10-second animation where the figure is momentarily held down by the crucifix and will be completely incapacitated and cannot kill the player even if they walk into him. Once ended, the figure will return to normal and will become dangerous again, but will not be aggroed unless a noise is made. The figure can only be survived using the crucifix and God mode and cannot be survived with Starlight or any excess of health. Any noise made while he is in a searching animation, kill animation, or crucifix animation will not be heard for the duration of the animation, meaning that while your friends are being brutally murdered, you're free to run around as much as you want. And finally, his noise detection range is about the size of the noises of his footsteps, meaning that if you can't hear his footsteps, he most likely can't hear you. On screen, you can see me moving back and forth, but he doesn't notice me until I begin to hear his footsteps. Again, in this clip, I'm shaking the shake light, but he doesn't notice me until I begin to hear his footsteps. So generally, if you can't hear his footsteps, he can't hear you. Additionally, when entering a closet or locker near the figure, or if he hears you and comes over to your hiding spot, he will trigger a minigame in which you need to control your heartbeat in order to survive. Halves of hearts will appear from the left and right, and you have to use your corresponding keys in order to survive. If you don't time the beats of the heart and you miss one, then you'll be kicked out of the hiding spot by Hide and into the figure, which will kill you. This section talks about the figure's main mechanics. This is the most important part of understanding the figure's AI, so make sure you pay attention. The figure has 3 phases: wandering, investigating, and enraged. The figure will always spawn in phase 1 when you encounter him. These magenta spheres, which are called nodes, are what the figure uses to pathfind. I did manage to get in contact with LSPLASH and found out some more information about how the figure chooses nodes well in this phase. The figure chooses nodes within 100 studs of the player at random. The visual on screen represents this area, with the center being where the player is. Because of this node system and how it functions, it means that there are some areas that are completely safe from the figure while he's in phase 1. Some of these include underneath the stairs in the library, past these barrels on door 100, and any subrooms that spawn in the first mines encounter are safe because these areas lack nodes that the figure can path to. There is also another system that figure uses to detect objects in his environment. Using Roblox Studio, we can open up a menu which highlights areas on the map that figure will avoid, like shelves and tables as seen here. Also using Roblox Studio, we can see the figure's initial path and the nodes he chooses here. He begins at the smashed lamp and walks between these 2 aisles and then into the center of the library before his node finding system is enabled. According to the Doors wiki, which is mostly accurate, the figure's base movement speed is 10 studs per second. This is then increased by a value of 0.8 studs per second for every book collected in the library. This value will also become multiplied by 1.75 if the figure is in phase 3. While I don't know exactly how much faster comeback here will make the figure, it seems to be about 1.4 times faster. Do take this with a grain of salt, however, since this was calculated with some very rough around the edges testing. Excluding modifiers, the figure's minimum speed is 10 studs per second, and its maximum speed is 28.7 studs per second. With that number also not including the movement speed bonuses the figure gets during the 2 electrical room chases, which is plus 4 studs per second in the opening chase, and plus 6 studs per second in the end chase respectively. Phase 2 is the figure's most niche phase, and you'll rarely see him enter unless a few factors are met. From what I've gathered, the figure seems to enter this phase when he hears a noise that doesn't send him into phase 3. These noises seem to be hearing the lighter, flashlight, and strap light flick on from far enough away. If he hears this, he usually won't enter phase 3, but this phase is very iffy. What he does do in this phase is walk to the location that a noise was made before returning to phase 1, rather than running like he does in phase 3. Now on to the much more interesting phase 3. When the figure hears a loud enough noise, he will be sent into phase 3. When the figure hears a noise that you made, it essentially creates a new node on the map that the figure runs to for the duration of his phase 3. When he reaches the node that the noise created, he scouts to 3 other nodes within a 120-degree radius in the direction the figure is looking as shown on screen. This radius essentially acts as a vision cone for figure to see nearby nodes since he's no longer in phase 1 and can't see nodes outside of this 120-degree radius. After phase 3 ends, he goes back into phase 2 and scouts a few more nodes before returning back to phase 1. The longer you make a noise, the longer the figure stays in phase 3, so even if you make a noise, try to limit the amount of noise you make after that so that the figure will return back to phase 1 sooner. For the items that send him into phase 3, they consist of the alarm clock, shake light, laser pointer, and glow sticks. All other items that haven't been mentioned have no effect on sound made. This includes both candles, vitamins, all consumable items, the bandage of battery packs, and any types of keys or lockpicks. Now you might wonder where the bulk light is on this list, and currently the figure has no reaction to the bulk light, but this is most likely a bug. So don't worry about using it around the figure in the current build of the game, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is fixed in one of the future updates. The figure also seems to have a smaller range of noise detection that sends him instantly into phase 3 if you're close enough. This makes it so things that would typically send him into phase 2 instead send him directly into phase 3. I also need to explain the mechanics of the alarm clock a bit more in depth. The alarm clock is the item that the figure reacts to the most. After winding it up and placing it on the ground, a 10-second timer starts, and at the end of the 10-second timer, the alarm clock will ring for 20 seconds, creating a loud ringing noise and causing the clock to vibrate while on the floor. The alarm clock is so loud that it will always throw him into phase 3 even when he is very far away. When the figure reaches the alarm clock, he will stop and smash it, permanently disabling it. There are 3 guaranteed alarm clocks that you can find throughout the 2 main floors. The first is on the desk in the Door 49 library reception, another one on a set of drawers inside the library, and the third being found in the mines on top of this crate in Jeff's sewer tunnel. They can also be found on tables in the hotel and inside of lockers and vine chests in the mines. Now that we understand the way that the figure works, I'll talk about his interactions with other entities and modifiers that are related to his encounters. For the modifiers that affect entities, I'll be talking about the entity and their modifier at the same time. The first entity I'll talk about is Giggle. With modifiers, giggles can spawn within close enough range to a figure room, but can never spawn inside of a figure room. If a giggle lands on your face and you are within the figure's hearing range, you will hear the giggle and run towards it. If the giggle is thrown off your face, the figure will run to it and crush it. The only thing about that is that with the content update, I haven't actually seen him crush Giggle anymore like he used to. I don't know if this is a bug, but from what I've seen, he doesn't seem to ever crush Giggle anymore. Gloombats can actually be a fairly serious problem when interacting with figure because he can hear them and has a special interaction with them. When the figure gets close enough to a Gloombat, he will use his arm to pull the Gloombat into his mouth and eat it. When Gloombats are near enough, it will put the figure into phase 3 when he hears them. Since each individual Gloombat makes noise, it causes the figure to run around very erratically trying to hunt each of them, and this isn't a great thing since you can often be caught in the crossfire of figure's movements and killed. When there are Gloombats near enough, I'd recommend waiting for them to despawn or for figure to eat them all so that you don't get killed by the figure running around. The 2 Gloombat modifiers, Infested and Bug Problem, are still relatively safe to use around the figure. The next entity I'll cover is Snare. Without using modifiers, it is impossible to encounter Snare and the figure in the same room, but Snare does have 3 modifiers that allow him to spawn in areas like the library and Door 100. As of a patch released after the content update, all of Snare's modifiers have been removed from the mines since they were ineffective. I don't know if these will ever be added back, but at the moment it is completely impossible to encounter Snare while in the mines. The reason why this is problematic is because when stepping in a snare, It plays an extremely audible noise that alerts the figure from pretty much anywhere in the room directly to your location. Snare also holds you down for around 5 seconds, giving the figure even more time to get to you before you can escape. Snares can also spawn inside the breaker room on door 100, making it so when you need to escape the figure to make it to the elevator, you'll have to navigate around multiple snares in order to make it. When you spawn out of the cutscene where the figure begins breaking down the breaker room door, you can sometimes spawn right next to or on top of a snare, which will almost guarantee your death. Screech is an entity that has a lot of misconceptions when it comes to his behavior surrounding the figure, so I'll make sure to clear these up. To keep it as simple as possible, the figure hears zero noises made by Screech whatsoever. He can't hear Screech when he is scared off by the player or when he attacks the player. Screech is impossible to be encountered with the figure in the hotel unless you're using the Lights Out modifier or the I'm Everywhere modifier, but in the mines, Screech can spawn naturally in either of the figure's two encounters. Eyes doesn't affect the figure in any way in terms of volume or alerting the figure to your location, so it's safe to use any of the Eyes modifiers in that regard. But eyes can still pose a problem when in the same room as the figure. The reason for this is because you'll need to be looking down as to not get damaged by eyes, but this can often come with the unforeseen consequence of running into the figure or having the figure run into you. If you use the audio from the figure to your advantage or are still able to track where he is, it shouldn't be much of a problem. Dread is an interesting one when paired with the figure because if you take too much time in a room, you'll be put in a very bad position. You'll most likely need to uncrouch if you want to escape Dread, but this will cause figure to be put into phase 3 and chase you. On the bright side, this will pretty much never happen in the hotel, even when using either of Dread's modifiers. This is because Dread will appear after a certain amount of time when staying in the same room, but in the case of the library and electrical room, the time it takes for Dread to spawn is increased, so you don't really need to worry about taking too much time. But in the mines, the first room is still considered a normal room and not a boss room, so the time isn't increased, but since the room happens so early in the run and is so small, it shouldn't be a problem. The second room, however, can be problematic under bad circumstances. While doing my Destiny Still Arrives full mines run, in about 1 minute inside of a fuse room, Dread was already halfway to spawning in, and the second figure room uses the same exact timing scale as a room where you need to search for fuses, and in this instant, it happened to be in the very next room. This means that I had roughly 1 minute and 50 seconds before Dread spawned in this room. Granted, this was with Dread's more intense modifier, but this was only at room 164, meaning that if I got the figure room later in the run, it could be very difficult to avoid Dread. A tip for this is that when standing completely still, the game considers you AFK, and Dread's timer won't be able to continue counting down, but it means that you'll only have a certain amount of time of active movement before Dread spawns. Dupe only has one moment where he can spawn with the figure, and this happens in the first mines encounter where he can spawn as one of the two doors that are located at the back of the room. Figure hears Dupe when he attacks you, and similar to Snare, due to the length of the animation that Dupe puts you in when you are attacked, it makes it extremely difficult to survive, especially due to the small size of the room. For tips, keep track of the door number, and if you forgot it, listen for Dupe's growling noises so you can make your way to the other door. If you have Battle of Wits enabled, this will completely mute Dupe's growling, so if you have zero idea which door to go to, guess randomly, but wait for the figure to be as far away from you as possible to give yourself the most amount of time to recover if Dupe does attack you. There's also a special animation where figure will maul Dupe and kill him, but it's extremely hard to trigger and is impossible to happen without Gloombats. The reason this only works with Gloombats is because figure can hear them through the wall, and it will lead him over to the door because he can never naturally pass to the door. Haste can only appear using his modifier, Make Haste, and is an overall pretty oppressive threat during runs. His interactions are limited with the figure, however. The library contains multiple 30-second switches to give you a lot of time to get through the room, but does cause you need to make sure not to miss any books. Door 100 also gives you extra time for you to get through it and to not have haste spawn. Figure can't hear you use the levers, and if haste spawns, it could cause you to need to stand up to run to a switch, putting figure into phase 3, but this isn't very necessary in most circumstances, and I don't really have any other tips regarding haste. Ambush can appear in all of the figure's encounters if you are using the again and again and again modifier, which has just recently been fixed by LSPLASH and now works properly in any case of ambush appearing, which seems to happen every 18 to 20 seconds after he leaves. You'll need to hide a few times, which could trigger the heartbeat minigame, but other than that, there really isn't much to ambush with the figure. Speaking of triggering the heartbeat minigame, let's talk about hide. Hide does emit audible noises that the figure can hear, so you will need to be careful with hide. This is primarily an issue in the mines because hide inhabits the last hiding spot that you exit, and if you re-enter it, hide will create a noise that will put the figure into phase 3 and bring him over to you. This effect is also mimicked if you're using the new roommate modifier in the hotel. Unlike Dupe and Snare though, when interacting with hide from outside of a closet or locker, there will be no animation that will hinder you from running. This is not the case, however, if you are inside of a hiding spot and are pushed out by hide, which will cause you to be stunned, giving time for the figure to kill you. Now you might be wondering if Rent's Do does anything. shoot, he heard me. What's that sound? What the? Yeah, so Rents does that. The reason why this happens is because Hyde is actually the one in control of the heartbeat minigame, and by making him more aggressive, it causes the heartbeat minigame to go insane like you just saw. The heartbeat minigame requires both the figure and Hyde to be present in order to start it, and once the figure leaves, Hyde will still be in that closet with you, so you'll need to get out afterwards. Another tip is that for some reason, after triggering the Door 100 cutscene, Hyde just no longer exists and you can hide without the minigame triggering. But to put it into simple terms, do not trigger the heartbeat minigame with this modifier on. Now that we're finished with the entities, I'll quickly talk about the other modifiers that can affect gameplay around the figure. The first modifier I'll talk about is the figure's own modifier, Come Back Here, which simply states the figure is faster. Earlier I discussed the relative speed increase of the modifier, but I didn't really discuss how it affects the gameplay. Figure being faster is bad for a number of reasons, with the biggest being that you can't navigate as easily with the figure being as fast. This is mostly an issue on Door 100 because he roams the hallways so much faster and you can't run away as easily if he enters Phase 3. I'd recommend taking extra time to plan your routes before moving into chokehold points like the library stairs or the Door 100 hallways and keeping better tabs on the figure. Also keep in mind how much faster figure is getting with each book you've collected. If you've collected 8 books, then figure will be a lot faster. The next two modifiers fall into the same boat but for the player instead. I'm talking about the My Legs and My Knees Are Killing Me modifiers. Knees just makes your crouching slower and legs reduces your walking and crouch speed. This makes your movement a lot slower since you are pretty much always crouching while in a figure room and your crouching speed is reduced. I'd recommend similar strategies for using Come Back Here and take extra time to plan where you're going since you're so much slower with these modifiers. Similarly to Come Back Here, you also aren't able to escape as easily because of your slowed movement. For Lights Out, you won't be able to see the figure nearly as easily, so make sure you pay attention to his audio and his mouth light. I'd recommend limiting the usage of your flashlight and other light sources. For soundproofing, it'll make the library books and switches not emit any shimmering noises, which can make them harder to find and put you in an area of higher risk if you don't find a switch and need to go back through dangerous areas, but you can always wait for guiding light. For Gone Fishing, guiding light will now never appear. This isn't a big issue for the library since you usually find the books before guiding light begins illuminating them anyway, but it does make it harder on Door 100. My tip would be listening very closely for the shimmering noises and make sure you don't miss any. Double check the rooms that you go into so that you don't need to go back to them later on. I'll list out a few tips and strategies that I have for surviving each one of the figure's encounters, starting out with the library. The library is a pretty large room, but the shelves and aisles can make it feel very claustrophobic, and especially with the furniture that can block off the aisles. You'll want to watch out for these since if you get caught on one side, the figure could make its way over to you and by random dumb luck, you could get killed. The alarm clock also has this spot that you could put behind these chairs and the figure can't reach it, meaning he'll be distracted for a very long time, and you can reuse the alarm clock. This spot is also completely safe for the player to stay behind as long as you don't get too close to the front of the chairs. There's also this spot right here which works the same. It's recommended to always stay crouched when near the figure, but you can outrun the figure to an extent. While the figure is walking at his base walk speed, you sprinting is slower than him, but there's one difference that can help you survive. Figure has a larger hitbox than you do, and when it comes to him pathing around different objects, he often gets stuck or can't loop as efficiently as you can. This means that taking sharp turns around corners and objects means that the majority of the time when the figure is in his base walking speed or with only 1 or 2 books collected, you can outrun him as long as you aren't running in a straight line. Or you could just loop him around a table like you're playing Dead by Daylight. I wouldn't recommend doing this though if you have Come Back Here enabled. Another strategy is getting into a hiding spot while being chased. As long as you can do the heartbeat minigame and just wait for figure to leave, you'll be safe. Remember, it's always safer to at least try the heartbeat minigame than just dying to him. If you want practice with the heartbeat minigame, you can enable the admin panel and find a room with hiding spots in it. Spawn figure and get him to trigger the minigame. No, wrong minigame. If you don't have the admin panel, your best bet at getting better is going to the mines and getting the first hostile figure encounter. Although you can practice these methods, it's not very hard to learn how to do the minigame. Books in the library start glowing after 5 minutes or 300 seconds, so if you really want to, you can hide out somewhere safe until the books are illuminated. Same goes for switches in the electrical room, which take 165 seconds or 2 minutes and 45 seconds to start glowing. In the second hostile figure encounter in the mines, the fuses will start glowing after 120 seconds or 2 minutes. Drinking the moonlight float will illuminate the figure and all books, switches, fuses, the library code sheet, and the breaker room key. In the library, you'll need to collect a minimum of 7 books, but it's recommended to get all 8. The reason for this is that the code is able to be discovered even with only 7 books, but it means you'll need to guess the last digit of the code in order to escape the library. The code sheet is relatively straightforward. When collecting a book, you'll receive a number and a shape. The code sheet shows where the digit of the code needs to be placed. For example, I picked up a book that told me x equals 3, and on the sheet it told me that x is the second shape in the code, meaning that the second digit of the code is 3. You most likely already know all of this if you've played the game before, but I still wanted to cover everything related to the figure. All of the necessary library books look like this and will poke out from the shelves slightly, making them easier to spot. They also make that shimmering sound that I played earlier when you're near them. The shimmering can be heard from the other side of shelves, so if you can hear it and can't find it, check the opposite side of the bookshelf. Books can also only be on the first 3 shelves of the bookshelf as shown here. The code sheet will also always spawn on the desk inside the library right here. Another thing I didn't mention about safe areas from the figure is right next to the padlock on door 51. As you can see, there are no nodes that can get the figure close enough to kill you while in this area, meaning you're completely safe as long as you don't make any noise. A few more random things to note: this drawer right here will always spawn 50 gold inside of it unless an item spawns in this slot or a battery or bandage. And since this desk in the reception is the same one as in the library, it functions the exact same and will hold 50 gold in this specific drawer. While inputting the padlock code, if you left click, it will increase the number you're hovering over by 1, but if you right click, it will decrease by 1, meaning if you have a digit that needs to be 9 and you're at 0, you can right click it to make it go down rather than scrolling all the way through using 9 of your left clicks. This also works on consoles by using the up and down D-pad buttons to go up and down in the combination. Once you escape the library for the first time, you'll be awarded the badge Shush. After the door 51 library door opens, a timer will start until the library doors close, and when they do close, it will void all players out of the library and they will be sent to door 51. Now I'll cover the strategies for door 100. After activating the lever on the side of the large industrial door in the electrical room, the door 100 cutscene will play, and after a moment you will regain control of your character. The figure will start following you and you need to run away. This section may seem simple, but there's a lot more to it than you might think. The first thing is that the figure will be moving at 14 studs per second, but will be walking instead of running. Another thing is that during these couple of seconds that he's chasing you, he knows exactly where you are. His AI essentially tells him exactly where you are until after the chase sequence has ended. The way you can tell that the chase sequence has ended is from the music going from the intense version into the calm version of Unhinged 2, which sounds like this. After the music ends, the figure goes back to normal and is in phase 1. Although the figure always knows where you are while in this chase, he can't actually hear you. This means that if you time the chase sequence properly, you can sprint into the maze area and hide in one of the rooms and figure will return to normal. Sometimes he'll be put into phase 3, so stay on guard and keep safe. Another common strategy is to immediately hide in a closet because the heartbeat minigame will never play while in door 100 because hide doesn't spawn on door 100. The maze area has 3 rooms: the corner room, middle room, and the right room. In order to escape this section, you need to find 10 breaker room switches that can be found in a various number of locations. After collecting 10 of these switches, you'll need to get into the breaker room using the breaker room key and fix the breaker to power the elevator to eventually escape. It's important to know where these switches can spawn inside of each of these rooms, but similarly to library books, they will be illuminated by guiding light after a while and emit a shimmering sound. Since it would probably take way too long to point out every single one of these places that the switches can spawn in, I'll go over them very briefly. Switches can spawn in the corners of these rooms, on the first few levels of each shelf, and on the floor not in the corners of the room. Inside these rooms, there are some nodes that the figure can make his way into. For the corner room, he will only enter up to here. For the middle room, he'll only enter up to here. And for the right room, he can sometimes walk all the way up to here. But the majority of the time, he'll just be roaming the few adjacent hallways, and when he does enter these rooms, he leaves the room very quickly. But these rooms aren't the only places these switches can spawn in, with the other primary area being the hallways surrounding these rooms. Switches can spawn on this shelf, these 2 shelves, these pieces of wall, random spots on the floor, and probably the hardest area to see, next to these tipped over doors on the ground. Because of where this switch spawns, you can actually get a switch early before the cutscene even starts, meaning that while the figure is active, you only need to collect 9 switches. The only other area that switches spawn in is upstairs, where you're completely safe from the figure's pathing as long as you haven't led him up there. They can sometimes spawn on the floor and on some of the upstairs shelves. The other important item in this section is the break room key, which spawns on these upstairs shelves and has this slight tan hue that you can see in the dark. Once you use the key to unlock the breaker room and have found all 10 switches, open up the breaker box and the switches will automatically be inserted into the box. This will trigger a cutscene that starts a fire and causes the figure to get brain damage from running into a wall before falling out of a window. This fire causes you to be completely cut off from the maze until you escape. In this section, you are completely safe and cannot die from anything. The fuse box now needs to be repaired in order to escape and beat the hotel. While interacting with the fuse box, numbers will begin to appear on the top of the panel. These numbers will be a number between 1 and 10 and will have a square next to them. If the square is filled, it means that the corresponding switch needs to be turned on. If the square is an outline and is not filled, it means that the switch needs to be turned off. The top part of the panel will go through all 10 numbers telling you if they need to be on or off, and when you do the sequence correctly, the bar at the top will fill in and go to the next section and will also reset all of the switches to be turned off. You have to do this 3 full times. This minigame is quite simple, but there is one trick to it. Other than just having a fast enough reaction time to switch on the correct switches, there's a specific event that always occurs during the third and final phase of the minigame. During this phase, the last number will not show up as an actual number, but instead as 2 question marks that will always be filled to begin with. Now, you might assume that you just guessed, but there's actually a much better strategy. At the beginning of the third phase, you need to turn all of the switches on to start and turn them off when the panel tells you to. This makes it so the random switch is already turned on, so you don't have to turn it on by keeping track of the numbers or by guessing. Doing the puzzle in under a minute, or as I would consider it flawlessly, will also grant you the Expert Technician achievement. After the elevator is powered, the figure will break through the door behind you and you'll need to run to the elevator. The figure will have a +6 stud movement speed bonus, and unlike the first chase, the figure will be in phase 3, meaning that the figure will be moving at 28 studs per second because of that 1.75 times multiplier. To account for this, the player also gets a movement speed bonus, and the figure also gets stuck a lot during this chase anyway, so unless you're actively trying to get yourself killed, you'll be fine. You can also just loop the figure around in a circle. I don't really know why you'd want to do this, but you can. Once you enter the elevator, the end cutscene will play and you'll be safe. Completing the electrical room and thus the entire hotel, you'll receive the achievement Rock Bottom. Assuming you have no modifiers activated when you escape the hotel, you'll be plummeted into the mines, where we'll have 2 more figure rooms that you can encounter. The mines encounters are a lot simpler than the hotel ones, so this will go by a lot quicker. The first mines encounter is pretty simple. Around the 110s, you'll encounter a room with a large chasm and the figure will drop into it. The figure quite literally cannot kill you in this room, and you just need to make it to the other side across one of the 2 bridges. Eyes, Giggles, and other room-tethered entities can never spawn in this room, however, Screech still can. The second encounter is slightly more technical. The room will generate randomly within rooms 120 to 124. The figure will always spawn behind this fence and you need to make it to the other side of the room to survive. This room is fairly simple. Imagine it split into 6 segments that look like this. There are 4 doors in this room, 2 on the bottom 2 segments and 2 on the top 2 segments. The bottom left segment is where you enter the room, and the bottom right segment will have a door that is either blocked and broken or will lead to a safe randomly generated subroom. One of the top 2 doors will be the exit to the room, with the other leading into a subroom, a dupe room, or it will be blocked off. The most important thing for this room is remembering the correct door if it's dupe, which will always be a 50-50 chance since there's only 2 possible dupe doors. Aside from dupe, the figure will roam around the room as usual. There isn't much strategy for this room, so just stay clear of the figure's path and hide if you need to. Now for the second figure room, which generates between rooms 160 to 190. Note that this room doesn't always spawn, and sometimes you can go through a whole mines run without seeing it. But instead of just making it to the next door to escape, you need to find 2 fuses to plug into the generator to open the gate inside the room. The fuses are scattered around the inside of the room, inside of lockers, drawers, and on top of tables. The biggest problem with this room is that since the fuses typically spawn inside of lockers and drawers, you'll need to open them without the figure hearing you. The best strategy for this is to open containers outside of his hearing range to look for fuses. I'd also recommend using glow sticks to distract the figure, and if you ever need to, you can stay inside of the cave the generator spawns in and you'll be completely safe. Once the generator is powered, find a good time to make your way to the button and open the gate to escape the room. If you keep the alarm clock you get before Jeff's shop, you can use it here to distract the figure while you look for fuses. I mentioned earlier that the figure hears powered up generators in the mines, but it doesn't hear the generator in this room. It's actually completely impossible to have the figure hear a generator in the game without the use of the admin panel or chat control, but there is a special animation where figure will smash the generator. The animation lasts a few seconds and figure cannot harm you or hear you during this time, but when the duration ends he'll become bugged and be moving like this and it will become lethal again. In regards to the admin panel, when spawning in figure he'll always be moving at 10 studs per second walk speed and cannot get faster unless he becomes enraged, even if you spawn one during the library or a sequence where the figure could become faster. This also works the exact same with the chat control feature. One final mention is that the figure cannot hear entities being crucified. And that wraps up the massive amount of info I just yapped at you for the last 30 minutes. I hope you all enjoyed and would be interested in seeing more of this style of content, and I definitely plan to do more of it. A ton of inspiration for this video came from Alter Ego and his Lethal Company AI series, and I might even do more entity guide videos similar to this one, although probably not as in-depth as this one. If you want to see that, let me know in the comments on what entities you want to see guides for in the future. If you have any questions about anything I covered in the video, feel free to ask. Huge thank yous go out to LSPLASH, who took time out of his day to respond to me and be able to help me with this video understanding how figure works. And also a huge shout out to Cable, who allowed me to use their remix at the beginning of my video, so make sure you go check them out. Another thank you to anybody's footage I use in the video, like OBasic1 and HD Dude. All of them will be credited in the description with their links to their footage and channels. And on one last note, I recently set up my Twitch, so go check me out over there to catch me when I go live. I'm still learning about how everything works, but you'll see me playing Doors and also a lot of Lethal Company if you're interested in that, or if you just want to pop in and say hi every once in a while. All support is greatly appreciated, whether it be making this far in the video or liking or subscribing. It helps me grow as a channel and I appreciate it. Thank you again for watching and have a good one.